Alright, welcome back. So let's see what my audio looks like. It looks good. Let's see what my input capture says. It says through my interface, looks good. Let's see output, display, and video, and we can see my acne there. Hopefully that goes away sometime soon. So yep, I've got my camera running. When I get back to the technical stuff, that maybe that'll help to see me like use hand motions and explain. Sometimes that helps. Certainly, but you can see kind of a sorry state of oops, and this is something I gotta remember not to do. So I have to remember to when I share my screen, I have to remember to shrink down the image of me. There we go. So now, hopefully, now that the image of me is shrunk like that, hopefully you can see this other image of me. So I'm going to try to make something like that happen again now that I have a working camera. Unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of people have missed this sort of image of me. So yeah, not the number one priority for sure, and it kind of adds inertia to making the video because I feel like I'm not camera ready. So I'll probably in future videos shy away from the camera still, even though it creates such internet gold as images like this. But for now, I just wanted the proof of concept. You know, I have this setup here that cost a little bit of a pretty penny, and I use it primarily to take pictures of the nature behind my apartment and to record weekend performances of the band I'm in, and it works great for that. But just for the small price of extra cable, I can actually use it for YouTube videos as well. So yeah, I'm just testing that now. And this is a Mbsr, and I was watching some of my older content, and wow, I'm kind of impressed by it. So thanks you so much for everyone who has supported me in the past, left comments and subscribed and left likes. It does keep me motivated. I'm gonna get back to that technical stuff soon. I've only got 2 weeks left of Mbsr. So speaking of which, let's complete that. And I'll reiterate why I decided to do Mbsr. It's kind of a bit of a curveball. So I'm a tech guy. You know, I used to want to be a professional classical musician, and believe it or not, that didn't work out. Could you have guessed? I just kind of learned a valuable lesson that it doesn't matter how good you are at something. What matters is the demand for it. So you can be, as I am, as we've seen, struggling to pass your LPIC-1, about to have your CCNA expire, and still not have a expert level certification 10 years in, and be very employable and skilled. In fact, you can have a tenth of that and still be very employable and skilled. When it comes to the technology industry, I found that a little bit goes a long way. You don't even have to be that good at a lot of things. To get like the cloud practitioner cert is not bad. To get the CCNA is not bad. The CCNA is considered to be one of the harder certs out there. And I had the CCNP. I was so like, you know, it's I found that that's what really matters in the end. Is there a market for the things you're trying to exchange for money? So you're trying to exchange your time, your talent, both when you try to become a professional musician and when you try to become a professional technologist. The difference is who's going to pay you for your time and your talent when you're a professional musician. Spoiler alert, nobody. But who's going to pay you for your time and talent when you're like a bad IT guy? Like literally, like a lot of people. like it's an in-demand skill. It and that really and when it comes to the classical world, a lot of violinists realize that, and they switch to playing viola, and they get more opportunities because there's fewer highly skilled viola players out there. So I started out in viola, and I came to that same realization, but instead of switching to another instrument, I switched my careers into tech, and I realized, okay, well, you don't have to have a CCIE at the age of 4 in order to succeed in this career field. Great, because in classical world, most of the really successful people have a family member who went through one of the most prestigious conservatories, and first started playing and practicing every day around the age of 3. So like it's just insane. Like no matter how good you are, there's someone half your age that's twice as good. And I found in tech, I'm sure that same thing exists. Someone half your age is going to be twice as good, but who cares? Like they just want someone with the minimum skills needed to accomplish the really valuable thing. And like in tech, you don't need to be a virtuoso to do something really valuable. And it's not the way in music either. Like, you can have really enriching musical experiences with only, a little bit of musical skill, but just the way the where the money is, like the incentive structures and all of that, it's like, man, you got to have all the talent in the world if you want to make $1 doing music. But I found that's not true in tech, although with the current kind of crisis of there being so many people being laid off and stuff, and maybe it's going more that way. So I guess basket weaving it is onto the to the next career change. But for now, let's focus on Mbsr, and the reason I bring that up is because the reason I decided to do Mbsr on this channel, and let me make sure I'm sharing my screen properly. It looks like I am. Is because, anyone in any profession deals with stress, deals with anxiety. I particularly, since the pandemic, have, I think, dealt with a lot of depression. I'm very susceptible to that. So this is a small, incremental, marginal change that can be adopted as part of a Kaizen approach, a Japanese business philosophy for continuous improvement. So there are likely some very real small gains that come out of Mbsr. If you don't believe me, go to pelosimindfulness.com, which is the course I'm using. Go down to and it looks like they reorganized it, and they reorganized it to be worse than how it was, unsurprisingly. So it looks like they removed the entire science section, which is the only... Okay, no, here it is. Okay, so yeah, the science section isn't as prominently displayed anymore, sadly, but it still exists. You go to resources and you go to scientific research. And then the only thing that really matters is these meta-analyses. Anything else is not as solid evidence. And then you click these, and these are the only things you need to look at. You don't need to look at anything else. And even within this, you want to go right down to the figures. So we want to get the full text article. There we go. We have it there. And we want to go and look at the figures. And if it doesn't have figures, we probably want to look at a different one that does have figures. Okay, so this one has figure after figure after figure. This one has good figures. So we can see that so we've got the effect size. We've got the outcome. So the outcome can be... I don't know what this stands for, but mindfulness, objective, physiology. I guess so. There's psychological and physiological. Then there's stress, sleep, well-being. So stress, sleep, and well-being. Those are ones I really care about, and we can see that those there was an effect there. It wasn't. I guess the biggest one was a psychological effect, but yeah, so I guess I don't know how to read these. Oh, author manuscript. Oh, okay. So these are comparisons with passive controls at post treatment, and then follow up. Oh, okay. Each size is relative. Oh, well, okay. Well, that's not good. It says that it made no difference. It said that it made only a really tiny difference, and for stress, it made basically no difference at all. Oh, that's not good. And it took off. So some of them didn't even show up as they used to be. I'm not sure if I'm reading this figure right. Hopefully I am. But yeah. So here's all meta-analytic effect sizes estimates. Okay, Mbsr equals BCT. Oh, yeah. So this is the effect size with passive controls and active controls. So with passive controls, the effect. Huh. Hey, you know what? We live in the world today, which is better than the world of yesterday because we have ChatGPT. So let's see what ChatGPT makes of these. We're going to say, tell me what you make of these figures. As an expert in all relevant domains of knowledge. All right, so these are tables, not figures. So let's see what it has to say about the figures. All right. Okay, so figure 1, comparison with passive controls at post-treatment and follow-up. Okay. All right. Okay, so the interventions generally show positive effects across different outcomes, especially for anxiety and depression. There you go. Suggesting that mindfulness-based interventions are effective for these conditions at both post-treatment and follow-up. And then figure 2, the results are dispersed, suggesting variability and effectiveness across different settings and interventions. Interventions seem to perform better compared to passive controls than when compared to active controls. So that could be a problem because when you're actively controlling for things, it falls apart like a house of cards, it seems like. All right, and then comparison here, the variability across suggests that the relative effectiveness may depend on the context and the nature of the outcome being, okay, that's not good. So these figures collectively support the use of mindfulness-based interventions as an effective treatment for certain psychological conditions, especially when compared to no treatment. However, the choice, yeah. So this is what I mean. It does show that it helps, and it's no surprise if we go to week 4 and we look at what we learned about in week 4, how to make stress your friend. I mean, if you do these mindfulness-based exercises, you make sure that you're breathing well, you're reframing things where it's not that I'm stressed, it's not that I'm anxious, it's that I'm excited, it's that I'm amped up, it's that I'm ready to go, it's that I'm feeling like it's that I'm ready, that this is important to me and it matters that I do well. That's a lot different than just, oh, this is stressful. It's like it can be stressful, and you can actually kind of almost like ride that stress like it's I watched a big wave surfing thing recently, so that's what's in my mind. So it's like riding the stress waves. Like you can use stress to your advantage because it will give you a little bit of a boost. Okay, so there we go. So yeah, that is that. Yeah, so I'm kind of rambling off here. Let me try to get back on topic. So what I would like to do next is finish off this final reading, and then all I have to go is the supplemental informal and formal practices. So a light week this week, and then next week it'll be the end of Mbsr training and back to the good stuff. So let's do the final reading, which will be this one here. The 5 myths of self-compassion, which is a very long one. There seem to be more than 5. Each myth has basically its own page. So let's do that. Let's read through this, and then that will be that for this video. All right, so this is 2015. It's a bit newer. It's from Psychotherapy Networker magazine, presumably, or some sort of publication. And it's the 5 myths of self-compassion. What keeps us from being kinder to ourselves, by Kristen Neff. Most people don't have any problem with seeing compassion as a thoroughly commendable quality. It seems to refer to an okay. Well, I think I know this word. I just let me get the
amalgam
of unquestionably good quality. So amalgam is like a mixture or blend. Kindness, mercy, tenderness, benevolence, understanding, sympathy, empathy, and fellow feeling, along with an impulse to help other living creatures, human or animal, in distress. But we seem less sure about self-compassion. For many, it carries the width of all those other bad self-terms: self-pity, self-serving, self-indulgent, self-centered, and just plain selfish. Even many generations removed from our culture's Puritan origins, we still seem to believe that if we aren't blaming and punishing ourselves for something, we risk moral complacency, runaway egotism, and the sin of false pride. All right, and I noticed that it's getting dark. I'm hoping that'd be cool if my camera light just came on automatically. That would be really cool. I'm not sure if it's going to do that. I'm not sure if it's configured to do that, because I know I intentionally turned it off because it was annoying that it comes on automatically. Let me try this. Will that work? That makes me yellow. I guess I'm okay. You can call me mellow yellow, so I'm good with that. All right, so consider Rachel, a 39-year-old marketing executive with 2 kids and a loving husband, a deeply kind person, devoted wife, involved parent, supportive friend, and hard worker. She finds time to volunteer for 2 local charities. In short, she appears to be an ideal role model. But Rachel's in therapy because her levels of stress are so high. She's tired all the time, depressed, unable to sleep. She experiences chronic low-level digestive problems, and sometimes, to her horror, snaps at her husband and kids. Through all this, she's incredibly hard on herself, always feeling that whatever she's done isn't good enough. Yet she'd never consider trying to be compassionate to herself. In fact, the very idea of letting up on her self-attack, giving herself some kindness and understanding, strikes her as somehow childish and responsible. Wow, that cuts deep. Okay, that's wow. Okay, And Rachel isn't alone because I'm there with her. Many people in our culture have misgivings about the idea of self-compassion, perhaps because they don't really know what it looks like, much less how to practice it. The practice of self-compassion is identified with the practice of mindfulness, now as ubiquitous as sushi in the West. But while mindfulness, with its emphasis on being experientially open to, experientially, yeah. So pronounce
experientially,
yeah. Open to and aware of our own suffering without being caught up in it and swept away by adversive reactivity is necessary for self-compassion. It leaves out an essential ingredient. What distinguishes self-compassion is that it goes beyond accepting our experience as it is and adds something more, embracing the experiencer, for example, all ourselves, with warmth and tenderness when our experience is painful. Self-compassion also includes an element of wisdom, recognition of our common humanity. This means accepting the fact that along with everyone else on the planet, we're flawed and imperfect individuals, just as likely as anyone else to be hit by the slings and arrows of outrageous but perfectly normal misfortune. This sounds obvious, but it's funny how easily we forget. We fall into the trap of believing that things are supposed to go well and that when we make a mistake or some difficulty comes along, something must have gone terribly wrong. Excuse me, there must be some error. I signed up for the everything will go swimmingly until the day I die plan. Can I please speak to the management, please? The feeling that certain things shouldn't be happening makes us feel both shamed and isolated. At those times, remembering that we aren't really alone in our suffering, that hardship and struggle are deeply embedded in the human condition, can make a radical difference. I remember being at the park with my son, Rowan, when he was about 4 years old, at the peak of the peak of his autism. I guess I don't understand what that means. I guess maybe that means before he got treated for his autism, but I'm just not sure that autism peaks. That's kind of an odd statement to me. I was sitting on the bench watching all the happy children playing on the swings, chasing each other, having fun, while Rowan was just sitting at the top of the slide, repeatedly banging his hand, something known as stimming. Admittedly, I started to go down the path of self-pity. Why can't I have a normal child like everyone else? Why am I the only one who's having such a hard time? And I'll do a sound check. There we go. Perfect. But years of self-compassion practice gave me enough presence of mind to catch myself, pause, take a deep breath, and become aware of the trap I was falling into. With a little distance from my negative thoughts and feelings, I looked out at the other mothers and their children and thought to myself, I'm assuming that these kids are going to grow up with carefree, unproblematic lives, and none of these mothers will have to struggle as they raise their children. But for all I know, some of these kids could grow up to develop serious mental or physical health issues, or just turn out to not be very nice people. There's no child who's perfect, and no parent who doesn't go through some form of hardship or challenge with their children at one time or another, okay? What about sensory therapy? Did she get that for her kid? And at that moment, my feelings of intense isolation turned into feelings of deep connection with the other mothers at the park and with all parents everywhere. We love our kids, but damn, it's tough sometimes. As odd as it may sound, by practicing self-compassion as we muddle through, we don't feel so alone. Fortunately, this isn't just wishful thinking about another self-help approach. In fact, there's now an impressive and growing body of research demonstrating that relating to ourselves in a kind, friendly manner is essential for emotional well-being. Not only does it help us avoid the inevitable consequences of harsh self-judgment, depression, anxiety, and stress, it also engenders a happier and more hopeful approach to life. More pointedly, research proves false many of the common myths about self-compassion that keeps us trapped in the prison of relentless self-criticism. So here are 5 of them, and I'm gonna pause it. I'll be right back. All right, I am back. So the first myth of self-compassion is that self-compassion is a form of self-pity. One of the biggest myths about self-compassion is that it means feeling sorry for yourself. In fact, as my own experience on the playground exemplifies, self-compassion is an antidote to self-pity and the tendency to whine about our bad luck. This isn't because self-compassion allows you to tune out the bad stuff. In fact, it makes us more willing to accept, experience, and acknowledge difficult feelings with kindness, which paradoxically helps us process and let go of them more fully. Research shows that self-compassionate people are less likely to get swallowed up by self-pitying thoughts about how bad things are. That's one of the reasons self-compassionate people have better mental health. A study by Philip Reyes at the University of Leuven examined the association of self-compassion with ruminative thinking and mental health among undergrads at his university. He first assessed how participants were using the self-report self-compassionate scale I developed in 2003, which asks respondents to indicate how often they engage in behaviors corresponding to the main elements of self-compassion. Examples include statements such as, "I try to be understanding and patient toward aspects of my personality I don't like. When things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through. And when something painful happens, I try to take a balanced view of the situation." Race found that participants with higher levels of self-compassion tended to brood less about their misfortune. Moreover, he found that their reduced tendency to ruminate helped explain why self-compassionate participants reported fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression. The second myth is that self-compassion means weakness. John had always considered himself a pillar of strength, an ideal husband and provider, so he was devastated when his wife left him for another man. Secretly racked with guilt for not doing more to meet her emotional needs before she sought comfort in someone else's arms, because that sounds like an emotional problem to me, he didn't want to admit how hurt he still felt and how hard it was for him to move on with his life by getting a hairpiece and a sports car. When his colleague suggested that he try being compassionate to himself about his divorce, his reaction was swift. "Don't give me that hearts and flowers stuff. Self-compassion is for sissies," and it's becoming more clear why his wife left. I had to be as hard as nails to get through the divorce with some semblance of self-respect, and I'm not about to let my guard down now. What John didn't know is that instead of being a weakness, researchers are discovering that self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience available to us. When we go through major life crises, self-compassion appears to make all the difference in our ability to survive and even thrive. John assumed that being a tough guy during his divorce, stuffing down his feelings and not admitting how much pain he was in, is what got him through. But he wasn't through, he was stuck, and self-compassion was the missing piece that probably would have helped him move on to buy a sports car and get a hairpiece. David Sabara and his colleagues at the University of Arizona examined whether self-compassion helps determine how well people adjust to a divorce. The researchers invited more than 100 people recently separated from their spouses to come into the lab and make a 4-minute stream of consciousness recording of their thoughts and feelings about the separation experience. Of divorce. 4 trained judges later coded how self-compassionate these discussions were, using a modified version of the self-compassion scale. They gave low scores to participants who said things like, "I don't know how I managed to do this. It was all my fault. I pushed him away for some reason. I needed him so much, still needed him. What did I do? I know I did it all wrong." So that's something you would say if you don't have a lot of self-compassion. High scores were given to people who said things like, "Looking back, you have to take the best out of it and move on from there. Just forgive yourself and your ex for everything you both did or didn't do." And I feel like you can go one step further and just be like, you're grateful for the good moments. You really, despite there being challenges, despite there being downs, there were also ups. Really grateful for the ups. And the downs, it can happen to anybody. Things are by nature very temporary and very unstable throughout the world. So the ups are basically a gift and a treasure, and the downs really are something that just kind of come with life. The researchers found that participants who displayed more self-compassion when talking about their breakup evidenced better psychological adjustment to the divorce at the time, and that this effect persisted 9 months later. Although I do wonder about this, because if this person is saying like, "Oh, I don't know how I managed to do this. It's all my fault. I pushed him away. Oh, I needed him and I still need him. What did I do? Oh, I know I did it all wrong." And then like their partner is saying like, "She was awful. She did all this crazy stuff to push me away and she did everything wrong." Those would be 2 very different responses, and the one that she said probably would be the one that appears to be less self-compassion. But like, of course, that person's going to be in a less psychological state because they're the one that like did all the messed up stuff that led to the divorce. So I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic for sure. This article so far isn't really doing it for me. All right. So results held even when controlling for other possible explanations. So there we go. Such as participants' initial levels of self-esteem, optimism, depression, or secure attachment. Studies like this one suggest that it's not just what you face in life, but how you relate to yourself when going gets tough as an inner ally or enemy that determines your ability to cope successfully. And I wish they would take into account things like, which partner had better, because I feel like, let's see here. So I feel like finances are the number one cause of the divorce. So which partner gave all the money away? That I feel like they should take that into account. What's the top 3 causes of divorce? Probably money. Oh, communication. Yeah. Infidelity. Yeah. So like which partner cheated? Like I wish they would control for that, because the partner that, financial issues. Yeah. Like which partner took out debt, which partner didn't do the budget, which partner was constantly making financial mistakes. Like I wish they controlled that. And like communication problems as well. Like which partner like didn't communicate as effectively. Okay, so results held that even when controlling for other possible explanations, studies like this one show that it's not just what you face in life, but how you relate to yourself when the going gets tough as an inner ally or enemy that determines your ability to cope successfully. And I'm very, very skeptical of that, because divorce, unfortunately, happens a lot. and we can see these top 3 causes for it. Some of these are very much, financial issues. If one partner is not following the budget, taking out debt, making very poor financial situations, then okay, let me ask you this. Is it possible for a single partner to be at fault for a divorce? Yeah, so it is possible for a single partner to be primarily at fault for a divorce. So chronic infidelity, abuse or addiction, neglect or refusal to change. So yeah, I just feel like if you have a partner that's doesn't have a lot of self-compassion, they might know that they're like really screwing up and having a sort of tendency that isn't compatible with a long-term monogamous relationship, that has problems with abuse or addiction, or is unable to address their personal issues. So like in that case, you would have someone like not thinking of very self-compassionately, and I feel like I would more align to that. And it's like, yeah, I'm very skeptical of this one, because I feel like the idea that, especially in a divorce, you can just like get through the divorce easier if you become self-compassionate. It's like, well, divorces are like, that's one of the major, aside from like a funeral or a wedding, like that's one of the biggest things that can happen in life. So like, I feel like maybe it can help, but like if you got divorced because you got addicted to drugs, like I'm just not, like, maybe self-compassion can help, but like in the end, just like being addicted to drugs is bad. Like, I don't know how. Okay, so let me ask you this now. So I'm reading an article on the myths of self-compassion, and one of the myths is self-compassion means weakness, and the claim is that researchers found participants who displayed more self-compassion when talking about a divorce evidenced better psychological adjustment to the divorce at the time. And this effect even persisted 9 months later. But I'm really skeptical of that claim, because I feel like participants who displayed more self-compassion might have had reason to display more self-compassion. For example, they were in a relationship with an addict. So it's like, they didn't know that their partner was struggling so bad with their addictions. So like, you can have a lot of self-compassion for yourself to be like, oh, this partner just was somebody I thought I knew, but it turned out I knew nothing about them. Whereas the other partner, like, I feel like it's harder to be self-compassionate for something like a financial failing, or like infidelity, or like an addiction. So like, I feel like the reason that a partner would do better for having self-compassion could just come down to the particulars of the divorce, and it perhaps being the case that it's just not as difficult for one partner to feel self-compassion rather than the other, because of the particular details of how the divorce happened.
This perspective could foster a more natural sense of self-compassion, as they recognize they did the best they could under difficult circumstances. In contrast, someone who struggles with guilt over financial mistakes, infidelity, or other personal...
Let me hear it again.
You're right to be skeptical.
Oh, it's the wrong voice.
Question the nuances behind the claim. It's reasonable to consider
that
the level of self-compassion someone can access might indeed depend on the specifics of their situation. If one partner feels more justified in showing self-compassion because they see themselves as less responsible for the breakdown.
It's reasonable to consider that the level of self-compassion someone can access might indeed depend on the specifics of their situation.
Okay. There we
if
go.
one partner feels more justified in showing self-compassion because they see themselves as less responsible for the breakdown of the marriage, it can be easier for them to adjust psychologically. For example, if someone divorces due to their partner's addiction or abusive behavior, they may more readily see themselves as a victim of circumstances beyond their control. This perspective could foster a more natural sense of self-compassion, as they recognize they did the best they could under difficult circumstances.
Right.
In contrast, someone who struggles with guilt over financial mistakes, infidelity, or other personal failings might find it hard to practice self-compassion because they view themselves as responsible for the outcome. However, it's also important to consider that self-compassion doesn't necessarily require seeing oneself as blameless. Self-compassion involves treating oneself kindly and understanding one's mistakes within the broader context of being human.
That makes sense.
Even if a person feels a fault for certain aspects of the divorce, self-compassion can help them accept their imperfections without harsh self-judgment, which can still promote better psychological adjustment. The ability to adopt a self-compassionate mindset can make a difference regardless of the specific circumstances. In research studies, there can indeed be a selection bias where those naturally inclined towards self-compassion are also in situations that are easier to process emotionally.
Exactly.
Still, the principle of self-compassion is about cultivating resilience in the face of adversity, which could potentially apply even when one bears some responsibility for the divorce. It would be insightful to know if the research accounted for different divorce contexts and how participants perceive their roles in the breakup. That could provide a clearer understanding of whether self-compassion's benefits extend broadly across varying circumstances or if it's more effective in certain situations than others.
Yeah. So here's the article.
The skepticism you expressed earlier is reflected in some of the complexities surrounding self-compassion research. It's valid to question whether self-compassion may come more naturally or be more accessible to individuals whose situations feel less directly tied to their own actions or faults. For example, if a person divorces due to a partner's addiction or abuse, it might be easier to cultivate self-compassion because they view themselves as less culpable for the relationship breakdown.
Yeah.
However, Kristen F's work and other research in this area do suggest that self-compassion can still be beneficial across a range of circumstances, even when individuals feel some responsibility for the outcome. The key lies in how individuals relate to their experiences. Rather than denying or downplaying their mistakes, self-compassion encourages a balanced acknowledgement of one's imperfections and a kinder approach to dealing with them. The study F cites by David Sabara and colleagues controlled for factors like initial levels of self-esteem, optimism, depression, and attachment, which helps address some concerns about selection bias. This means the benefits of self-compassion were observed even when accounting for these individual differences. The findings suggest that the ability to treat oneself with kindness during a divorce, regardless of who might be at fault, can improve emotional recovery and adjustment over time. Your point remains important, though. The nature of a divorce and the person's role in it could influence how accessible or challenging it is to practice self-compassion. While the research supports the idea that self-compassion aids resilience, there can indeed be a spectrum of effectiveness, where some individuals find it easier to apply than others, depending on their circumstances and perceived responsibility.
All right. Well, let's continue with this. So, myth number 3 is that self-compassion will make me complacent. Perhaps the biggest block to self-compassion is the belief that, so based on that article, what is self-compassion?
Based on Kristen F's article, self-compassion involves treating oneself with the same kindness, concern, and support that one would offer to a friend facing a difficult time.
Oh, yeah.
It includes 3 main components. Self-kindness. This means being gentle, understanding, and forgiving with oneself.
Okay, I get it. So it's like having a better internal dialogue rather than one that's like really harshly critical and like, oh, you knew not to do this and you did it anyway, rather to have like a more self-compassionate one that's sort of like, oh, you have a disorder that you need treatment for or something like that.
Exactly, you got it. Self-compassion is about shifting that internal dialogue from harsh self-criticism to a kinder and more understanding tone. Instead of berating yourself for making mistakes or struggling, a self-compassionate approach acknowledges the difficulty while offering support.
Yeah.
For instance, rather than saying, I knew better and messed up anyway, I'm so stupid, a self-compassionate response would be more like, I made a mistake, but I'm dealing with a lot right now, and it's understandable.
Right.
I can learn from this and take steps to improve. It's about recognizing that imperfections are a normal part of being human, and treating yourself with the same compassion you'd offer to someone else who's struggling.
Okay, got it.
In situations involving mental health challenges, like a disorder that requires treatment, self-compassion helps you recognize that the issue isn't entirely within your control. It shifts the focus from self-blame to a more constructive perspective, understanding that you're facing a genuine difficulty and that it's okay to seek help and take care of yourself. It's a much more sustainable way to motivate yourself to grow and heal than harsh criticism.
Okay, got it. So the next myth is self-compassion will make me complacent. Perhaps the biggest block to self-compassion, let me see if my light comes on automatically. It does not. Okay. Perhaps the biggest block to self-compassion, let's see if the camera's still running after that light change, and it is the belief that it'll determine, and let me do a sound check because that always needs to be checked, our motivation to push ourselves to do better. The idea is that if we don't criticize ourselves for failing to live up to our standards, we'll automatically succumb to slothful defeatism. But let's think for a moment how parents successfully motivate their children. When Rachel's teenage son comes home one day with a failing English grade, she could look disgusted and hiss, "Stupid boy, you'll never amount to anything. I'm ashamed of you." Makes you cringe, doesn't it? Yet, that's exactly the type of thing Rachel tells herself when she fails to meet her own high expectations. I will say, I would rather not say that sort of thing to someone or have that sort of thing said to someone. But Michael Jordan didn't make varsity. He made JV for 1 year, and he became Michael Jordan. So like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of neutrality in language where it's like, "Stupid boy, you'll never amount to anything. I'm ashamed of you." You know, if that's true, if you're ashamed of them, and like, I think it's fair to express that. Calling the boy stupid is maybe over the line, but they failed English. Like, that's what a failing grade means. It means you're stupid. So like it's not necessarily inaccurate to say that if the kid is flunking out of school, that is what stupid people do. They flunk out of school. So like it's you'll never amount to anything. I guess that's where it kind of goes over the line, because just because someone is having a rough patch in their life doesn't mean they'll never amount to anything. But I don't know. I feel like obviously, I wouldn't want this said to me when I was a kid. I wouldn't want to say this to a kid. I wouldn't want other people to say this to a kid. But I feel like there's a lot of neutrality in language where like you don't know how a kid's gonna take this. They might be like, "Oh, you're right. I'm so embarrassed that I failed this. I have to do better next time." And then they really they're like, "Oh, I'm not stupid. I know I can do this," and they do it. So like I just don't know that like that statement is going to I don't know that statement qualifies as like an abusive statement necessarily, or like a statement that is like completely out of bounds, because if they're failing out of school, that stupid people fail out of school, yes. You'll never amount to anything. I mean, you can't know that, but if you want to be successful, you need education. You need to the definition of being successful is not failing out of things. So and then I'm ashamed of you. I mean, I think it's fair to if they really feel a lot of if they feel that they're ashamed of their kid flunking out, then I mean I just think honestly saying how you feel is not doesn't make me cringe. Yet that's exactly the type of thing Rachel tells herself when she fails to meet her own high expectations. But most likely, rather than motivating her son, this torrent of shame will just make him lose faith in himself, and eventually he'll stop trying altogether. That's a big fat claim. So evaluate this claim.
The claim that, rather than motivating her son, this torrent of shame will just make him lose faith in himself, and eventually he'll stop trying altogether, is consistent with well-established psychological research.
Oh, it is. Okay, well that's...
1.
I didn't know that.
Impact of shame on motivation. Shame tends to be a demotivating emotion. When someone feels shame, they perceive themselves as fundamentally flawed or inadequate, which can undermine their sense of self-worth and belief in their ability to improve.
Alright.
In a child or even an adult, shame can lead to a sense of hopelessness, where they feel that no matter what they do, they will continue to fall short. This feeling can sap the energy and motivation needed to make positive changes, leading them to give up on trying altogether. 2.
So what should you do if you're...
Theory, people are more motivated.
So what should you do if your boy is failing at school? Like, obviously that's a sign that the boy is stupid, right? Like, stupid people fail things and drop out of education. And then, like, if you feel ashamed of your boy, like, why can't you just honestly express your feelings and say that? Like, I don't see why that is wrong. I guess the statement that they'll never amount to anything is like not true, but at the same time, the statistics come into play, right? It's like, if you want to be successful, you need to get education. So if you're flunking out of your studies, okay, sorry, there are some typos. You misheard me there. But what I meant to say was, if you are flunking out of your studies, then yeah, that's probably a good sign that you'll not amount to anything, because you do need like a high school degree, right? Like, you need education to be successful. Like you can't just expect people to take you seriously if you have like no evidence that you'll be successful in their role. Like, why would you be successful when somebody pays you money when you couldn't be successful like in other, like in school or whatever? But yeah, I guess that's the part where I'm like, okay, that does make me cringe if you tell a kid they'll never amount to anything. But, stupid people fail education. And then if you feel ashamed, I think that's fair to express how you feel.
It's understandable to feel frustrated or even ashamed when a child is struggling in school, but labeling a child as stupid or predicting they'll never amount to anything can be harmful and counterproductive. Here's why, and what a more constructive approach might look like. 1. Failure in school doesn't mean someone is stupid. Academic performance isn't a direct measure of intelligence or potential. There are many reasons why a child might be struggling in school, such as learning disabilities. Conditions like dyslexia, ADHD, or autism can make traditional learning environments challenging. Emotional or social issues, problems at home, bullying, or mental health issues can distract from academic focus.
Yeah, that's true.
Lack of motivation or engagement. A student may not see the relevance of their studies, or the teaching style might not match how they learn best. It's also worth noting that intelligence isn't a fixed trait, it can be developed over time. The concept of growth mindset emphasizes that abilities and intelligence can be cultivated through effort, strategies, and support. 2. Shame and negative labels are counterproductive. Expressing shame or labeling the child as stupid can have lasting negative effects. Internalizing negative beliefs. When children hear that they're not smart or won't amount to anything, they often internalize these messages and start to believe they're true. This can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the child stops trying because they think their efforts won't make a difference. Damaged self-esteem. Constant negative labeling can lower a child's self-worth, making it harder for them to engage with challenges. It can also lead to anxiety, depression, and disengagement from learning altogether. Reduced motivation. If a child feels that no matter what they do, they will always be seen as a failure, why would they try to improve? This is where shame often leads to giving up entirely. 3. Constructive approaches. A more effective response to a child's struggles is to identify the root cause and find ways to support improvement. Express concern without judgment. It's fair to share that you're worried about their future, but frame it in a way that communicates belief in their ability to improve. For example, I'm concerned about your grades because I know you're capable of more. How can I help you succeed? Encourage a growth mindset. Teach them that failure is a part of learning, not final judgment on their abilities. Emphasize effort, progress, and strategies rather than fixed traits like being smart or dumb. Address underlying issues. If there are emotional, social, or learning difficulties, seek help from school counselors, tutors, or therapists. These can make a significant difference. Set achievable goals. Help your child break down tasks into smaller, manageable steps and celebrate small wins to build momentum and motivation. 4. Education and success. It's true that education can open doors, but it's not the only path to success. Many successful people didn't excel academically but found other ways to leverage their strengths. While it's important to emphasize the value of education, it's also crucial to communicate that struggling in school doesn't determine their entire future. Summary. Expressing shame or labeling the child as stupid isn't productive and can cause more harm than good. It's more helpful to approach the situation with empathy, address any underlying issues, and focus on supporting the child's growth. While education is important, resilience, problem-solving skills, and belief in one's ability to improve are key factors that can drive long-term success, even if academic struggles are present.
All right, that was pretty good. Yeah. Okay. So I guess that does make me cringe now because it's a fixed mindset. The boy is stupid. The boy will always be stupid. The boy has a fundamental, immutable trait of being stupid, and that is reinforced by the next statement: "You'll never amount to anything." And I'm ashamed of you. So that's very much a fixed mentality. A growth mindset would be like, I'm ashamed of you for this low grade because I knew you could do better. But even that might, expressing shame can have negative effects. So you can basically say, I wish you had done better because I know that you're really capable of, I know that you're a really intelligent person and you're capable of doing this. And I want to feel pride in you for passing this. I guess that could be another way you say it, but I don't know. I honestly feel like that would be interpreted badly too. Like I kind of question the, power of words in this regard. Honestly, I feel like even if you say the exact perfect magic words, like that can be interpreted badly too. Like I kind of question the power of words in this regard. Like I feel like words have a lot more neutrality to them than this sort of stuff would lead you to believe.
You raise an interesting point. The idea that there's a perfect set of words that will always have a positive impact can indeed be misleading.
Exactly.
Words themselves can have a lot of neutrality or even be interpreted differently based on context, tone, or the listener's mindset.
Right.
The power of words doesn't come solely from the specific phrases used, but also from the broader relationship dynamics, the emotion behind them, and how they're received.
Yeah.
1. Words versus. Intentioned words are only one part of communication. The intentions and emotions behind what's being said, as well as the context in which it's said, matter just as much or more. For example, if you express concern in a sincere, caring way, the message will likely be received differently than if it comes across as critical or condescending, even if you use the same words. 2. Subjectivity and interpretation. People interpret words through their own personal experiences, emotional state, and current circumstances. What might feel supportive to one person could feel dismissive to another, depending on their past experiences or how sensitive they are to the issue. This subjectivity means there are no guaranteed magic words that work for everyone. 3. Actions speak louder than words. Actions often convey more than words do. How consistently you support someone, how you listen to them, and ways you show care or concern often matter more than any specific words you use. If a child sees that you're genuinely trying to help them improve and are there to support them, that can be more impactful than any one statement you make.
Yeah, exactly.
4.
Exactly.
The limits of language. Language has its limitations because it tries to encapsulate complex thoughts and emotions into simple expressions. The true meaning behind words often extends beyond the surface level, involving the nonverbal cues, tone of voice, and the broader relationship context. Because of these layers, words alone may not always convey what we intend, regardless of how carefully we choose them. 5. Finding balance in communication. While words might not have magical power, they can still be part of fostering a positive environment. Even if perfect words don't exist, it helps to be mindful of how you speak to someone who is struggling. Encouraging language, patience, and a supportive tone can contribute to building trust and understanding, while acknowledging that misunderstandings are still possible. Summary: you're right in questioning the power of words and recognizing their neutrality. Words can only go so far. Their effectiveness is shaped by the relationship, intentions, and emotions involved. There's no single perfect way to say something, but striving for empathy and support in how you communicate still matters, even if the impact of words isn't always straightforward or guaranteed. The Surgeon General's advisory emphasizes the significant impact of parental mental health on the well-being of children and society as a whole. It highlights that parents and caregivers experience unique stressors, including economic instability, time demands, concerns about children's safety, and cultural pressures, which can negatively affect their mental health.
Yeah.
When parents are under severe or prolonged stress, it can contribute to higher risks of mental health conditions like depression and anxiety for both them and their children. The advisory calls for systemic changes, including expanded access to paid family leave, affordable childcare, mental health services, and community programs that promote social connection.
That makes such a big difference, yeah.
They urge stakeholders, such as governments, employers, health professionals, and communities, to take action to reduce stressors and create a supportive environment for parents and caregivers.
Yeah, for sure.
Overall, the advisory seeks to prioritize the mental health of parents, not just for their own well-being, but also to help foster healthier, more resilient families and communities.
Yeah, and that's what I mean too, is like, this stuff doesn't scale, right? Like if you obsessive over every little tiny word that you say and like you go through this like complicated process, like, I'm doing 8 weeks for this Mbsr course, right? It's like, I'm trying to manage stress, right? It's like, I just shouldn't have a lot of stress in my life. Like my life should be really fun and enjoyable. So it's like, if I have to do something to like manage stress, it means like my stress is already like too high. And like, it's the same thing with this parenting thing. It's like, if there's these sorts of demands on parents, then that means that whatever other mechanism should be there to help out their kids is missing. Like, it shouldn't fall upon the parents to have to do everything exactly right. They're already stressed trying to make ends meet. Like, if they had all the time in the world, then that would be fine to expect this out of parents. But like, they have to balance so many different things. To expect them to say every little tiny word in the exact right way to their kids is just impossible.
You're absolutely right. The idea that parents should be able to manage everything perfectly while also dealing with the pressures of work, finances, and daily life is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
If stress is high enough to require constant management, it's a sign that the system itself isn't providing the right support or balance.
Exactly.
Parenting is challenging enough without having to navigate a minefield of perfect responses to every situation. Realistically, parents can only do so much, especially when they're under pressure themselves. The need for stress management techniques like Mbsr, mindfulness-based stress reduction, reflects that external stressors are already overwhelming.
Yeah.
Ideally, there would be more societal support to reduce the burden on individuals, allowing life to be more fun, enjoyable, and less dominated by the need to manage stress.
Let's go surfing.
The advisory you referenced also touches on this, the need for systemic changes in community programs to support parents. The idea is to shift some of the burden away from individuals so that parents don't have to carry the weight of perfectionism in raising their children. It's about creating a better environment for families overall, rather than placing the full responsibility on parents to handle everything just right, despite overwhelming challenges.
Exactly. All right, well, let's continue on with this. So it makes you cringe, doesn't it? Yet that's exactly the type of thing Rachel tells herself when she meets her own high expectations. But most likely, rather than motivating her son, this torrent of shame will just make him lose faith in himself, and eventually he'll stop trying altogether. Alternatively, Rachel could adopt a compassionate approach by saying, "Oh, sweetheart, you must be so upset. Hey, give me a hug. It happens to all of us. But we need to get your English grades up because I know you want to get into a good college. What can I do to help and support you? I believe in you." Notice that there's... Yeah, but does she have time to help? Like, okay, you can buy me, 3 different alternative textbooks and a private tutor for $1,000 a month. You can become an English tutor yourself and tutor me yourself. It's like, that's a good question, but I don't know if it has a good answer. Notice that there's honest recognition in the failure, sympathy, and does her son doesn't know, I mean, that'd be a good question for the teacher, probably. Like, maybe the son, I feel like the son doesn't know why they're failing. Like, if they knew, they would just like do that and pass. Notice that there's honest recognition of the failure, sympathy for her son's unhappiness, and encouragement to go beyond or around this momentary bump in the road, because the mother has all the time in the world for that, apparently. This type of caring response helps us maintain our self-confidence and feel emotionally supported. Ironically, even though Rachel wouldn't even dream of taking the former approach with her son, She unquestionably believes that self-flagellation is necessary for her to achieve her goals. She assumes that her anxiety, depression, and stress are a result of her not trying hard enough. So that is a good point. I have found that if you're constantly self-flagellating, which is kind of a funny term, getting over that can help. I definitely kind of made that change in my own thinking, and yeah, it's you're such an easy target. it's like leave that to the bullies. they got you covered. Don't do it yourself. All right, so yeah, so she assumes that her anxiety, depression, and stress are a result of her not trying hard enough. But there's now a good deal of research clearly showing that self-compassion is a far more effective force for personal motivation than self-punishment. Yeah, so let's get this claim evaluated, because that's a good big claim as well. And if it's true, it's an amazing claim.
The claim that self-compassion is a far more effective force for personal motivation than self-punishment is supported by a growing body of psychological research.
Cool.
Here's an evaluation of this claim based on current evidence. 1. Self-compassion versus self-punishment. Self-compassion involves treating oneself kindly in the face of setbacks, acknowledging that mistakes are a part of being human, and focusing on constructive actions to improve.
Yeah.
Self-punishment, on the other hand, often involves harsh self-criticism, guilt, and shame. Research indicates that self-compassion is more beneficial for motivation because it promotes a healthy and sustainable approach to personal growth. 2. Research supporting self-compassion's role in motivation self-determination theory. This theory suggests that people are most motivated when they experience a sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Self-compassion supports these needs by helping individuals see mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than threats to self-worth. In contrast, self-punishment can undermine feelings of competence and lead to avoidance behaviors. Growth mindset. Self-compassion is associated with growth mindset, which views intelligence and abilities as malleable. Individuals who practice self-compassion are more likely to persist after setbacks because they see failures as part of the learning process. Self-punishment, however, can promote a fixed mindset, where setbacks are viewed as evidence of inherent deficiencies. 3. Evidence from empirical studies. Julianne Bryans and Serena Chen's research. Their studies at the University of California, Berkeley, found that self-compassionate participants reported greater motivation to make amends and improve after recalling personal failures. Self-compassion led to higher levels of effort and a commitment to change compared to self-punishment.
Okay.
Anxiety, depression, and resilience. Research also indicates that self-compassionate individuals are less likely to experience anxiety and depression, conditions that can significantly hinder motivation.
That's good.
By mitigating these negative emotions, self-compassion creates a more conducive environment for personal growth. 4. The downside of self-punishment undermines self-esteem and confidence. Harsh self-criticism can erode self-esteem, leading individuals to view themselves as incapable of success. This can result in why bother attitude, decreasing the likelihood of trying again after failure.
All right, so yeah, we've got all sorts of books on that from here. So it looks like some are not available. Let's get the audiobook on hold. That might be a good one. And then let's see here. Okay. Yeah, so that's a good one. Let's see. Let's get that one. All right, so yeah. Self-harsh criticism is not as effective for change as is self-compassion. For instance, a series of research experiments by Juliana Bryans and Serena Chen. And let me pause and see what that notification was. All right, there was nothing. So, yep. Of the University of California at Berkeley, examined whether helping undergraduate students to be more self-compassionate would motivate them to engage in positive change. In one study, participants were asked to recall a specific action they felt guilty about, such as cheating on an exam, lying to a romantic partner, saying something harmful that still made them feel bad about themselves when they thought about it. Next, they were randomly assigned to one of three conditions. In the self-compassion condition, participants were instructed to write to themselves for 3 minutes from the perspective of a compassionate and understanding friend. In the second condition, participants were instructed to write about their own positive qualities. And in the third, they wrote about a hobby they enjoyed. These two control conditions helped differentiate self-compassion from positive self-talk and positive mood in general. The researchers found that participants who were helped to be self-compassionate about their recent transgression reported being more motivated to apologize for the harm done and more committed to not repeating the behavior again than those in the control conditions. Self-compassion, far from being a way to evade personal accountability, actually strengthens it. If we can acknowledge our failures and misdeeds with kindness, I really messed up when I got so mad at her, but I was stressed, and I guess all people overreact sometimes. Rather than judgment, I can't believe I said that. I'm such a horrible, mean person. It's much safer to see ourselves clearly. When we can see beyond the distorting lens of harsh self-judgment, we get in touch with other parts of ourselves, the parts that care and want everyone, including ourselves, to be as healthy and happy as possible. This provides the encouragement and support needed to do our best and try again. All right, and the second to last myth of self-compassion, this is the longest article I've read so far probably, is that self-compassion is narcissistic. In American culture, high self-esteem requires standing out in a crowd, being special and above average. How do you feel when someone calls your work performance or parenting skills or intelligence level average? Ouch. I guess it depends on what average is. I might feel very good about that. The problem, of course, is that Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon notwithstanding, it's impossible for everyone to be above average at the same time. We may excel in some areas, but there's always someone more attractive, successful, and intelligent than we are, meaning we feel like failures whenever we compare ourselves to those better than us. So as an aside, that's one of the problems with Facebook and social media is it shows you people at their best, and their best is, and it's like if they graduate from med school or something like that, you're led to believe, oh, I didn't accomplish enough educationally, even though you have no desire to become a doctor. The desire to see ourselves as better than average, however, to get and keep that elusive feeling of high self-esteem, can lead to downright nasty behavior. Why do early adolescents begin to bully others? If I can be seen as the cool, tough kid in contrast to the wimpy nerd I just picked on, I get a self-esteem boost. Why are we so prejudiced? If I believe that my ethnic, gender, national, political group is better than yours, I get a self-esteem boost. Indeed, the emphasis placed on self-esteem in American society has led to a worrying trend. Researchers Gene Twenge of San Diego State University and Keith Campbell of the University of Georgia, who've tracked the narcissism scores of college students since 1987, find that the narcissism of modern-day students is at the highest level ever recorded. They attribute the rise in narcissism to well-meaning but misguided parents and teachers who tell kids how special and great they are in an attempt to raise their self-esteem. But self-compassion is different from self-esteem. Although they're both strongly linked to psychological well-being, self-esteem is a positive evaluation of self-worth, while self-compassion isn't a judgment or evaluation at all. And that's a good point. It can even be a negative assessment of your worth. Like I have, it can, like if something is going wrong, you can recognize that is the case, and you can have self-compassion, even though the thing that is going wrong might actually mean that you have less self-worth. In a very literal sense, you could think of it as you lost all your money for some reason. You have less self-worth, but you can still have self-compassion. Instead, like a good example would be you try some investment thing that blows up in your face and you lose all your shirts. Well, you can be like, You can have self-compassion there. Had I known that this, or I actually don't know how that would work, because I hope that never happens to me. I don't think about that very often. Okay, so instead, self-compassion is a way, it looks like there's a typo there, is a way of relating to the ever-changing landscape of who we are with kindness and acceptance, especially when we fail or feel inadequate. In other words, self-esteem requires feeling better than others, whereas self-compassion requires acknowledging that we share the human condition of imperfection. And remember what self-compassion is. Which is what I started this with. Well, let's ask it again. What is self-compassion? So it's the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and support that you would offer to a close friend during difficult times. Perfect. All right. So self-esteem. Self-esteem is also inherently fragile, bouncing up and down according to our latest success or failure. I remember a time my self-esteem soared and then crashed within about 5 seconds. I was visiting an equestrian stable with friends, and the old Spanish riding instructor there apparently liked my Mediterranean looks. You are very beautiful, he told me, as I felt myself... Oh, okay. That's a surprising response to that. As I felt myself glow with pleasure. Then he added, don't ever shave your mustache. Shave your mustache. Okay. That's an odd interaction to me. Self-esteem and that... Wait, why did she take the first one well, but the second one not? She's self-conscious about her mustache. Self-esteem is a fair-weathered friend, there for us in good times, deserting us when our luck heads south. But self-compassion is always there for us, a reliable source of support, even when our worldly stock has crashed. It still hurts when our pride is dashed, but we can be kind to ourselves precisely because it hurts. Wow, that was pretty humiliating. I'm so sorry. It's okay though. These things happen. There's solid research for the idea that self-compassion helps us in good times and bad. Mark Leary and colleagues at Wake Forest University conducted a study that asked participants to make a video that introduced and described themselves. For instance, hi, I'm John, an environmental sciences major. I love to go fishing and spend time in nature. I want to work for the National Park Service when I graduate, and so on. They were told that someone would watch their tape and then rate them on a 7-point scale in terms of how warm, friendly, intelligent, likable, and mature they appeared. The feedback was bogus, of course, given by a study confederate. Half the participants received positive ratings, and the others neutral ratings. The researchers wanted to examine if participants' levels of self-compassion, as measured by scores on the self-compassion scale, would predict reactions to the feedback differently from their levels of self-esteem, as measured by the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. They found that let me take mine. Let's see what mine is. So the self-compassion scale is for me. Hopefully this doesn't take long to... She has a mustache? I don't see one. No mustache. That comment must have bothered her so much that she shaves her mustache every day. All right, so let's see here. Can I? Yeah, so let me take the test. I don't know how to take the test. I don't think I can take the test. Oh, here we go. Test. Okay. So, okay, perfect. So, read each statement carefully before answering. And then, okay, so almost never, almost always. So I'm disapproving and judgmental about my own flaws and inadequacies. You know what? I would say I often am, fairly often, because this weight gain has got me down, and I make a lot of mistakes with that. And I'm very often disapproving and judgmental about those mistakes. When I'm feeling down, I tend to obsess and fixate at everything that's wrong. I would say everything that's wrong. I guess about half the time. When things are going bad for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through. Occasionally. Man, I'm going to score really low on this. When I think about my inadequacies, it makes me feel more separate and cut off from the rest of the world. Fairly often. I try to be loving towards myself when I'm in emotional pain. I try. So yeah, I guess about half the time. That's what the point of this Mbsr is. I'm trying to do better from that. So when I feel it's something important to me, I become consumed by feelings of inadequacy. Fairly often. Yeah, and I've seen that on the channel here with the CCI, with the JNCIE and the LPIC one. Yeah, so I honestly, I should probably put this up to almost always. When I'm down and out, I remind myself that there are lots of other people in the world feeling like I am. Occasionally, probably almost never. When times are really difficult, I tend to be tough on myself. I would say, yeah, about half the time. When something upsets me, I try to keep my emotions in balance. That I definitely do. When I feel, but maybe that's a bad thing. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. I do definitely try to do that. So let's select this one for it. I'm intolerant and impatient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. I would say like almost never. When I'm going through a very hard time, I give myself caring and tender just like did. I would say occasionally. When I'm feeling down, I tend to feel like most other people are probably happier than I am. I guess fairly often. When something painful happens, I try to take a balanced view of the situation. Occasionally, I see my feelings as part of the human condition. Almost never, and there's reasons for that I don't want to get into on the professional channel. I am not going to score well on this. When I see aspects of myself I don't like, I get down on myself. I would say fairly often, yeah. When I fail at something important to me, I try to keep things in perspective occasionally. When I'm really struggling, I tend to feel like other people must be having an easier time of it. I would say that's not the case. I'm kind to myself when I'm experiencing suffering. I don't even know what it means to be kind to yourself. So I'm going to say almost never, because I don't even know what that means. When something upsets me, I get carried away with my feelings. I guess sometimes I do. Yeah. So occasionally, I can be a bit cool-hearted towards myself when I'm experiencing. I guess almost never with that, because I don't even know what that means. That would probably be the camel that breaks the straw that breaks the camel's back. When I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness. I guess almost never. I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inaccuracy occasionally. When something painful happens, I tend to blow the incident out of proportion. I guess occasionally, not often. When I fail at something, I tend to feel alone in my failure. I guess fairly often. I mean, the JNCIESP, like, who else fail at that? So I try to be understanding and patient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. I guess occasionally or almost never. So let's see what I got. Oops, and I have to give my I have to give away my credit card number. Okay, so I got let's see here. I got So one to So for every category except for the isolation category, I am very low in self-compassion. So that's the point of the Mbsr. But unfortunately, I've only got 2 weeks left. So yeah. Well, that's not good. I think there's also a the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. I'm not gonna take that. I'm just too far deep into a time sink here. I've got 2 full pages left. They found that self-compassionate people reported similar emotional reactions in terms of how happy, sad, angry, or tense they were feeling, regardless of whether the feedback was positive or neutral. People with high levels of self-esteem, however, tended to get upset when they received neutral feedback. Wait, I'm just average? They were likelier to deny that the feedback was due to their own personality and blamed it on external factors such as the observers being in a bad mood. This suggests that self-compassionate people are better able to remain emotionally stable regardless of the degree of praise they receive from others. Self-esteem, in contrast, thrives only when the reviews are good, and it may lead to evasive tactics when there's a possibility of facing unpleasant truths about oneself. And the final myth, thankfully, is self-compassion is selfish. Many people are suspicious of self-compassion because they conflate it with selfishness. Rachel, for instance, spends a large portion of her days caring for her family and many of her nights and weekends volunteering for the charities she supports. Raised in a family that emphasized the importance of service to others, she assumes that spending time and energy being kind and caring toward herself automatically means she must be neglecting everybody else for her own selfish ends. Indeed, many people are like Rachel in this sense, good, generous, altruistic souls who are perfectly awful to themselves while thinking this is necessary to their general goodness. But is compassion really a zero-sum game? Think about the times you've been lost in the throes of self-criticism. Are you self-focused or other-focused in the moment? Do you have more or fewer resources to give to others? Most people find that when they're absorbed in self-judgment, they actually have little bandwidth left over to think about anything other than their inadequate, worthless selves. In fact, beating yourself up can be a paradoxical form of self-centeredness. When we can be kind and nurturing to ourselves, however, many of our emotional needs are met, leaving us in a better position to focus on others. Unfortunately, the ideal of being modest, self-effacing, and caring for the welfare of others often comes with the corollary that we must treat ourselves badly. This is especially true for women, who research indicates tend to have slightly lower levels of self-compassion than men, even while they tend to be more caring, empathetic, and giving toward others. Perhaps this isn't so surprising, given that women are socialized to be caregivers, selfishly to open their hearts to their husbands, children, friends, and elderly parents, but aren't taught to care for themselves. While the feminist revolution helped expand the roles available to women, we now see more female leaders in business and politics than ever before. The idea that women should be selfless caregivers hasn't really gone away. It's just that the women are now supposed to be successful at their careers in addition to being ultimate nurturers at their home. The irony is that being good to yourself actually helps you be good to others, while being bad to yourself only gets in the way. In fact, I recently conducted a study with my colleague Tasha Baratovas at the University of Texas at Austin that explored whether self-compassionate people were more giving relationship partners. We recruited more than 100 couples who'd been in a romantic relationship for a year or longer. Participants rated their own level of self-compassion using the self-compassion scale. They then described their partner's behavior in the relationship on a series of self-report measures, also indicating how satisfied they were with their partners. We found that self-compassionate individuals were described by their partners as being more caring, for example, gentle and kind toward me, accepting, for example, it respects my opinions, and autonomy supporting, for example, it gives me as much freedom as I want, than their self-critical counterparts, who were described as being much more detached. For example, doesn't think about me very much, aggressive, for example, yells, stomps out of the room, and controlling, for example, expects me to do everything his/her way. Participants also reported being more satisfied and securely attached in their relationship with self-compassionate partners, which makes sense. If I'm withholding toward myself and relying on my partner to meet my emotional needs, I'm going to behave badly when they're not met. But if I can give myself care and support to meet many of my own needs directly, I'll have more emotional resources available to give to my partner. The research literature is unclear about whether self-compassion is actually necessary to be compassionate to others, given that many people do a pretty good job of caring for others while shortchanging themselves. However, a growing body of research indicates that self-compassion helps people sustain the act of caring for others. For instance, it appears that counselors and therapists who are self-compassionate are less likely to experience stress and caregiver burnout. They're more satisfied with their careers and feel more energized. All right, just one page left. Let me take a quick break. More energized, happy, and grateful for being able to make a difference in the world. So let me take a quick break. I'm kind of running out of juice here, so it's a good thing there's only one page left. It's almost an hour and 30. Typically, the hour mark is what I'm shooting for, because that's when I start to kind of break down in attention and focus. So let's pause it and then be back and finish this out. All right, we just got one page left, so let's slog through it. It's even a shorter page. This is definitely turning into a hard slog, but we're very close to the finish line. So because we evolved as social beings, exposure to other people's tales of suffering alleviates the pain or activates the pain centers of our own brains through a process of empathetic resonance. When we witness the suffering of others on a daily basis, we can experience personal distress to the point of burning out. And sorry about that. And caregivers who are especially sensitive and empathetic may be most at risk. At the same time, when we give ourselves compassion, we feel a protective buffer, allowing us to understand and feel for the suffering person without being drained by his or her suffering. The people we care for then pick up our compassion through our own process of empathetic resonance. In other words, the compassion we cultivate for ourselves directly transmits to others. I know this firsthand through my experience raising an autistic child. Rowan is now 13, and although he can be a grumpy adolescent, he's a loving kid who poses few parenting challenges. But it isn't always so. I often faced situations that I thought were beyond my ability to cope, and sometimes had to rely on the power of self-compassion to get me through. Once, when Rowan was 5, I took him to England to see his grandparents. In the middle of the transatlantic flight, he threw an almighty tantrum. I have no idea what set him off, but I suddenly found myself with a flailing, screaming child and a plane full of people looking at us with dagger eyes. What to do? I tried taking him to the bathroom in hopes that the closed door would muffle his screams, but after I'd shuffled down the aisle trying to keep him from accidentally hitting passengers along the way, I found the toilet was occupied. Huddled with Rowan in the tiny space outside the toilet, I felt helpless and hopeless, but then I remembered self-compassion. "This is so hard for you, darling," I said. "For myself, I'm sorry this is happening. I'm here for you." While making sure that Rowan was safe, 90% of my attention was on soothing and comforting myself. My mind became flooded with compassion to the point that it dominated my experience far more than my screaming child. Furthermore, as I'd already discovered when I was in a more peaceful and loving frame of mind, Rowan also calmed down. As I soothed myself, he was soothed as well. When we care tenderly for ourselves in response to suffering, our heart opens. Compassion engages our capacity for love, wisdom, courage, and generosity. It's a mental and emotional state that's boundless and directionless, grounded in the great spiritual traditions of the world, but available to every person simply by virtue of our being human. In a surprising twist, the nurturing power of self-compassion is now illuminated by the matter-of-fact, tough-minded methods of empirical science, and a growing body of research literature is demonstrating conclusively that self-compassion is not only central to mental health, but can be enriched through learning and practice, just like so many other good habits. Therapists have known for a long time that being kind to ourselves isn't, as is too often believed, a selfish luxury, but the exercise of a gift that makes us happier. Now, finally, the science is proving the point. So there we go. Probably one of the longest articles on here, but I've got it finished. So with that, I've got all of the readings and videos for week 7 finished. I just need to do the formal and informal exercises, and then on to the last week, week 8, and I will register for the sort of the certification and post that on LinkedIn. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.